This morning I am off to Birmingham. I've got a meeting at 9 o'clock, and as usual the roadworks are in 19 miles ahead, and I have a feeling that I am going to be delayed yet again. Every time I come up to Birmingham recently I have been delayed, there have been roadworks, and I get really cheesed off with this now. I try and be here for 9 o'clock, but it never ever happens for 9 o'clock. My sat nav says I got 31 miles to go, and it's going to take me 2 hours and 38 minutes. How can I take 2 hours and 38 minutes doing 30 miles? There was a comment left on one of the last YouTube films I did. They were asking about what should I do when I finish university? Should I get an apprenticeship? How do I go about getting some training and setting up on my own? I am not an expert in that field, and I don't think anybody can tell you the right or wrong way to do that. Based upon my own personal experience, when I came out of university, I've got a degree in three-dimensional design, and I specialised in sort of graphics and then jewellery and metalwork, and I did a bit of woodwork and all that sort of thing. But what I noticed that when I came out, and this is the case with a lot of people, is that you come out of university and you come out and you expect that you're going to walk straight into a job. That is never the case, because let's turn this down, a bit warm in here, because all the employers, and I can say this because I am an employer, want experience. Being in a university, you're within a little cocoon. You're not exposed to the outside world. You are within a little workshop, you do the bits and pieces. You can take as long as you want doing a little piece. And whilst that is great, and whilst you get your degree, and whilst you learn and you're being educated, it does not prepare you for the outside world. So I came out of university, I didn't go into jewellery straight away. I tried to get a job in various aspects of my expertise, and each job I went for, they said, so what experience have you got? Obviously, the only experience I had was in university, but that was not real life. Now, so go forward to, I don't know, 15 years from when I came out of university. I had my shop, I had my workshop, I had members of staff. One guy came to me, he wanted a job. Hang on a second. Sorry about that, I had a phone call. Yeah, so as I say, wind forward about 15 odd years, I have staff working in the shop, and one of the guys who was on the bench left me to go on to other things, and so then I applied then for someone to work on the bench with me. One guy who applied for the job, he came for an interview. On paper, he had one of the best CVs I've ever seen. He had a degree in, I think it was jewellery design, he had a master's in jewellery, he had a HND in something, he had his teaching certificate, and on paper everything was absolutely brilliant. I asked him how much he wanted. I swallowed because he wanted a lot of money, but I said, alright then, brilliant, so this is what we do. We melt gold down. Can you do that? He said, I've never done that before. I thought, okay, no problem. I said, right, I need somebody who can set. Can you do that? He said, no, I can't set stones. Alright then. I said, alright, so working at the bench, I need to repair jewellery as well. What are your skills when it comes to repairing jewellery? And he said, I have never repaired anything in my life before. Now on paper, this guy was perfect, but in practice, he could not do anything that a working workshop could do. So he could design, not a problem, but he could not put his hands to things that a true workshop has to do. So he couldn't melt gold down, he couldn't set stones, he couldn't sort of fabricate jewellery. So I was wondering really what these qualifications were for, basically, because he couldn't do anything what I wanted him. So I said, I'm awfully sorry, I can't afford to pay you that amount of money when you can't do half the work on the bench. So I said, I'm awfully sorry. But the interesting thing was, because when he was with me, I showed him our workbox of all the work we had to do. I said, look, I've got all these jobs to do. This is over Christmas time. I got all these jobs to do. I got all this setting to do. I've got all these melting down, fabricating, making up rings and wedding bands and bangles and chains and so forth. And there was lots and lots of work. And I was on my own, basically, on the bench, panicking a bit because there was nobody now that I could get to help me. Now, the interesting thing was, a couple of days later, he rang me and he said, Andrew, I've seen the work you've got to do. And I realised that I don't have the experience that I actually need to become a jeweller. Because he was purely a designer and he did a little bit of fabricating and bits and pieces. So what he told me was that, can I come and work for you? But don't pay me. Don't pay me a thing, but teach me. Teach me how to do all these jobs. Teach me how to melt down. Teach me how to fabricate. Teach me. And what could I say? This guy was going to work for me for free. Sure, it will take me time to teach him, to get him up to a set sort of speed, a set standard that would really, really help me. But I thought, well, this guy is going to help me for nothing. So, despite all of his qualifications, he couldn't do what I wanted. But he was willing to learn. And it was going to be a mutual agreement, whereas he worked for me for no charge, but I gave him the skills and the experience in a working workshop. And he must have been with me for about 6 months without me paying him. Then I started then to pay him, not what he was expecting, a lower amount, because obviously he still wasn't up to speed and still didn't have all the skills that I required of him. But then I started to pay him, and then he carried on the work, and his work was getting faster, a lot better, his finish was a lot better, his polishing, his techniques, and everything was a lot better. So it really did help. Now, what I'm trying to say is that when you come out of university, don't expect to walk into a job and to be paid what you think, what you expect to be paid as a graduate. It is never gonna work that way. So perhaps if it was me and I was living my life all over again, I would perhaps come out of school at 16 or come out of school at 18. I would go straight away into a jewellery workshop to get the necessary skills. Because actually what I did when I came out of university and realised nobody wanted me because I needed experience, I got a Christmas job, excuse me a second, I'm going to overtake. I got a Christmas job in a high street jeweller's to get experience of selling, get experience of handling jewellery. And as luck would have it, they had an on-site workshop. So every break that I had, every coffee break, every lunch break, I would be in that workshop chatting to the guy's name was Greg, chatting to him, watching him, seeing what he did, seeing the techniques that he was using, seeing the way he cleaned up, seeing the way he polished, seeing the way he melted down, the whole thing. And I gained experience purely by watching. Okay, I was being paid to sell jewellery, but I was watching him and I was learning. I wasn't being paid to watch, I wasn't being paid to understand what he was doing, but I was being paid to sell. At the end of the Christmas period, I was offered a permanent job. but I did not want to work in a shop. I wanted to set up on my own. But I had the experience of sitting next to a jeweller for a couple of months, looking and learning the trade. And you realise that when you're in university, you don't know anything. You come out, you think you know it all. You think you know how to solder, you think you know how to saw. You're taught CAD, CAM, you're taught how to use computers, but the majority of workshops are hands-on. They don't use CAD, CAM. You need to know how to manufacture, you need to know how to repair, you need to know how to work metal, you need to understand how metal works, how metal moves, the sound of the metal when you're hitting it. You need to know how a piece of metal is going to work. You need to know when it's going to melt. You don't need to know the temperature of a piece of metal, at what melting point well, you know what I mean. You need to know just purely by visual sight how metal works, how metal reacts, and only experience can give you that information. So what I would do myself, I would come out of school straight into a workshop. You're going to get paid the lowest of the low. Obviously minimum wage comes into this now. You're going to be making the tea, you're going to be running errands, but it's all experience, it's all knowledge. You can gain so much experience and knowledge by watching, by looking, by listening. But if you're in university and you've got coming up in a couple of months with your degree in jewellery design and you want to start up on your own, personally I wouldn't straight away. I would go get a job in a workshop, in a jeweller's, work over Christmas, work a couple of months, expect to work for free, expect to work for the lowest of the lowest. You go into a shop, you go into a workshop, don't expect to, hey, I know it all, I've got my degree, I'm better than you, because you're not. The guy who's been sat at that bench, who has calluses on his hands, who has cuts, who has marks, who has ingrained dirt in his fingers, is far more experienced than you, little fresher coming out of university thinking you know it all, because you don't. So I would always go into a workshop to gain the experience, gain the knowledge, gain the techniques and the skills for the old masters in there.
In 1 mile, keep to the right.
Thank you. The old masters, because they are the people who are going to teach you how to make jewellery, how to repair jewellery, and bring you up to speed. Once you've spent a few months or a couple of years in that workshop, then you've got the skills, then you've got the knowledge that you can combine with what you've learnt in university. Then you can go on, and perhaps through that period of time that you may have spent at the bench watching somebody work, you then have worked out what you want to do. You can formulate your business plan. Coming out of university, I said you don't know anything. You formulate this business plan, which is what I did. Oh my gosh, if I look back now on my business, I wish I could find it. It was all typed on an old typewriter, presented to the bank to get an overdraft. Looking back now, I think, oh my God, you're so naive. You didn't know anything at all. So, if it was me, what is my advice? You're in university, you're coming out, you spend a couple of months in a jewellery shop, you spend a couple of months in a workshop, formulating your plan, understanding what goes on in the real world. Because in university, that is not the real world. You're in a cocoon. So come out, know what you want to do after a few months, then you can sort of start up on your own. Then you know what you're going to do. You may have the best qualification, you may have the best grades. That doesn't mean jack shit in the real world, I'm afraid.
Keep to the right.
Just my 2 penn'orth worth, that's all.